John DeSando.
Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio. We'll watch the credits from up.
Cinema Classics is produced and hosted by John DeSando. Listen to shows Thursdays at 8:01 p.m. on WCBE 90.5 FM. And listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm K G Kline.
And this is, hey, Cinema Classics. And I think we have a classic today.
We do. We certainly have a classic director.
Listen to you. I can tell you don't like this movie as much as I do.
Oh, Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
The movie is Pulp Fiction. The director, of course, is the great Quentin Tarantino. And I'm a fan of both. I really am.
Yeah.
I like to describe Quentin Tarantino as Hollywood's equivalent of Stephen King. Stephen King is to literature what Quentin Tarantino is to movies. They make extremely enjoyable, dependable work that the public loves.
Well, I think that I also think that Pulp Fiction is a change agent in our culture, at least in our movies. I think that the style in which he presents his characters and the storyline, which is never linear, are characteristic of him, and I think a lot of movie makers have picked up on it.
And I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
This movie has not only boosted a lot of careers, including Tarantino's, but it has also been very influential in film today.
Oh, yeah.
The way that Tarantino handles violence has had an impact. The idea that make it a little over the top, make it a little too graphic, more than it needed to be, and it comes across as just a little bit funny.
Oh,
There's an element of humor in all of Tarantino's films, especially when he does get violent, as he often does. That's one of his trademarks. And that instead of looking at it as, ooh, that's gross, you look at it as, oh, okay, that was kind of cool.
Well, I think you're right. He minimizes all that violence with his language.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's almost an artificial language. And when you have two characters, and most notably when we have John Travolta
Yeah.
and what's his name? It's not, I'm sorry. When we have John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson
Oh, yes.
bantering together, that's the essence of it. That is so good.
And Quentin Tarantino's other trademark is the use of pop culture.
Oh, too much.
Yes, and I love that. That's one of the things I really love about him. He gets that right. Other directors have tried to introduce pop culture and it just flops, it fails. But he knows exactly the right dose and the right amount that, especially if you're around the age he is, which, late 50s, early 60s, you grew up with the same stuff that he grew up with, and you can just kind of sit back and go, oh yeah, I remember that.
Well, yeah, I mean, he grew up selling movies.
He worked at Archive Video in L.A., and he became known in the L.A. circuit as a film nerd. He was somebody that you could go to if you wanted advice on what movies to watch.
Yeah.
And people would ask him, did you study film? And he'd say, no, I watch movies. and then, he developed the script for Reservoir Dogs. And his first work in film was actually directing exercise videos for Dolph Lundgren.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's how he got to start. And then through that, he got connections with James Marsden. And James Marsden knew Harvey Keitel. And the two of them read Reservoir Dogs and said, we like this. We want to be a part of this. And they gave him some money. And he made Reservoir Dogs. And it became a hit.
And Harvey Keitel became a part of our culture.
He did.
And as well as changing the life of John Travolta.
Oh yeah, well that Pulp Fiction definitely did that.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about Tarantino's, he entered the scene around the same time as Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder. But what Snyder did, which is what most directors did, is as soon as they made their first hit film, which in Snyder's case was Brick, which we talked about a few months ago, they got offers from studios, and Snyder, saw the money and followed the money to the studios, and he ends up making movies like the Star Wars Episode 9. These studio films that you see none of his original vision, none of his of what made him such an interesting person early on. But Tarantino didn't do that. Tarantino, after he made Reservoir Dogs, he started getting offers too. He was offered Speed, and he was offered Men in Black. They offered him $6 million to direct Men in Black, and he said no. He said, I'm going to spend a couple years developing this script called Pulp Fiction, and I'm going to do it my way. So he didn't follow the money. Instead, he stayed true to his own vision, his own voice, and he decided, I'm going to make the movie the way I want to make the movie, and that was Pulp Fiction. And that's why it's such a great original style film.
I can break down Pulp Fiction tripartite. The first one would be the two boys going to assassinate the young men who have made a stupid mistake.
Yes.
And the second one would be Travolta and Uma Thurman
Yes.
together. And the third one would be cleaning up the car.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you know, when I think about
Yeah.
that movie, because it's difficult, he's not linear. But,
Mhm.
so it's difficult to put it all together. When I put it together, what are the three scenes that I really love, that I remember very well? Talk to me a little bit about the one with the young man. I think when people try to have a menacing movie, a terrorizing movie, I don't think they can do better than these two guys coming to take.
No, because they're taking it so lightly. They're talking about, you know, stuff. They're talking about pop culture. They're arguing about meaningless things.
They're talking about cheeseburgers in
Yes,
Paris.
yes, and this is the thing I love about Tarantino. Is his dialogue goes off in tangents, and you're just laughing along, and none of his characters take themselves very seriously. This is another thing. They're very, very self-effacing. They're very. There's nothing pretentious about Tarantino's films.
I think the moment you know where Tarantino's coming from is when, after they get through talking about Le Royale, which is the burger, and then the Le Big Mac,
Yeah.
after they get through all of this stuff, and I think even, that's I think when they talk about foot rubs, and they go into,
Yeah.
just,
And you're swept up in this
Right.
discussion. You just want to
so then,
listen in.
then Samuel L. Jackson brings us back to earth and said, okay, let's get in character.
Yeah.
It's about ready to burst down the door and assassinate these young guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the kind of thing that makes the violence palatable.
Yeah.
It makes it funny, but it actually makes it true. I mean,
Absolutely. Well, Tarantino got his influence from the works of Sergio Leone
Okay.
and the old action grindhouse movies of the late 60s and the early 70s that never
That's
took
right.
themselves seriously. He was influenced by the blaxploitation films and by those over-the-top action films. And of course, nobody does action movies anymore. That genre is dead. Unless you're Rob Zombie, but nobody's told Rob Zombie that genre is dead, and he's dead too, so
No.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the important thing here is that Tarantino figured out that action films were dead, but there was a way to revive action films by turning them into an actual drama. And that's what he did. He turned action films of the 70s into a drama, and it works because he's so lighthearted about it.
Dramedy, I would call it.
Dramedy, exactly. Now, he considers his films to be serious drama. I do not.
No.
I do not at all.
Oh, you can see his tongue.
But if we talk about the Uma Thurman part, we also talk about the fact that he incorporates music into his movies almost better than anyone else.
Well, who would have known John Travolta would have, except that when you think about John Travolta, you think about him dancing.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you have that set piece of the two of them dancing, going out at night, he's been asked by his thug boss to take care of his wife while the boss is gone.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one of the things I love about not only the characteristic Travolta dancing, which I think is his own style
Yeah.
and mesmerizing, is when he comes back, when they come back, and he has to go back in. He brings her home because I think she's tripped way out.
Oh, yeah.
And he has to come back, and he talks to himself about how, he just doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to get near her again because he's
Yeah.
very attracted to her. And I love that real moment where he says, would this be a good thing to do? No. And then he talks to himself.
Yeah.
He tries to talk to himself out of it. So, it's a great human piece.
And that whole scene, that dance scene, has become such a part of American pop culture.
Oh,
As much as Tarantino likes to emulate pop culture in his movies, he's become a part of pulp culture.
the third, my tripartite, my third scene, which is the Harvey Keitel coming in as it was the cleaner, the fixer.
Yes.
Yes, right. Straight from the Reservoir Dogs
Yeah.
role.
Yeah.
I mean, Keitel is just way too good. He is so cool. He's dressed like for a prom. He's coming to clean up a murder. Well, and the gory part of this, which is so much better than anything even that I saw last night in Smile 2, is that Travolta shoots this guy they have in the back of the seat. He accidentally shoots him, and the brains are all over the car.
Yeah.
And who would have thought about that kind of thing? I never thought about what you do with bodies or with blood afterwards.
Yeah.
You do it, it's done. And so this is where Tarantino picks up on that thing, and we can all identify and say, it's like your mother telling you to clean up your room. You got to do it in there.
Yeah.
And Keitel is so in character. He is so cool.
He's almost the same character that he had in Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And there's Tarantino uses the same actors over and over again for his movies. Uma Thurman,
Yes.
Harvey Keitel, Marsden, they're all regulars. He has his usual cast that he puts back
Now
together.
here, I don't know if he's had him before, but Bruce Willis appears.
He worked with Bruce Willis a second time because Tarantino was very involved in a movie called Sin City.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and he worked with Bruce Willis, and in my money, Sin City is one of Bruce Willis's greatest performances. Most people don't know what we're talking about. If you get a chance, see Sin City. It's one of the great works of hard-boiled detective stories.
Yes, right. And here, he's touching. He's a palooka.
Yeah.
He's past his prime, and he's told by his boss that he better throw this next fight, and he doesn't do it.
He doesn't do it. No, he stays
And
true to
man,
himself.
You are asking for trouble.
Oh, yeah.
You tell the big boss.
Yeah.
Well, he knocks out, kills the guy.
Yeah.
I think in the first round maybe, and he's out of there. And one of the iconic scenes would have to be him riding a motorcycle, picking up his girlfriend and riding the motor, and she talks to him about is this motorcycle? He says, no, it's a chopper. And he tells him more than once, you recall this what it is. It's a beautiful machine.
And Pulp Fiction was the one that established Tarantino's career. You know, he'd gotten off to a great start with Reservoir Dogs, and Reservoir Dogs had become a cult film even before he made Pulp Fiction. But Pulp Fiction was the one who really put him right up front.
All right, so let's, for our podcast, for Double Take, let's talk a little bit more about Tarantino's oeuvre, and especially Hollywood.
Yeah, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Oh my gosh,
So-
what a magnificent film.
Ken, what do you advise our audience concerning Pulp Fiction, which is streaming?
Well, if you actually haven't seen it, you're one of the two out there. Do see it. There's a very good reason why the public loves this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of Tarantino films that are under the radar that you may not have seen. The guy's only made 9 movies. He claims he's only going to make 10. But if you haven't seen Jackie Brown, see Jackie Brown.
Oh, yeah, good.
And if you haven't seen other films like Sin City we just talked about, definitely go out and find Sin City. It's a fantastic film in its own right.
And if you want to know anything about movies, I think you have to see this film, because I believe it changed movie making in our country and probably around the world. I'm John DeSando.
Cinema, 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 cinema. Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends.